All right, all right, all right. We're going to let folks get in here. We're going to let this thing spool out because sometimes there's a little bit of delay and that kind of thing. But as you're coming in, I guess I'll get to rocking. Once again, thanks for being here today at lunchtime on July the 7th. Pretty cool that it's on the tail end of the July 4th weekend. And as I think most of you are aware, I'm Ashley Tison, founder of OZ Pros. It's good to have you guys here today. My family and I just came off of the 4th of July. We spent it down in Pawleys Island, South Carolina. Man, do they do it right down there. I love South Carolina for a number of reasons, not the least of which is that fireworks are legal down there, and they got things that go boom, which is really cool. But they also do this thing called Salute from the Shore, and actually I think it goes down, I think it goes from like Myrtle Beach all the way down the state of South Carolina. So I'm pretty sure that it's just a South Carolina thing. Maybe they do it in other places as well. But they literally fly down the whole coast of South Carolina. And they have fighter jets. They've got like old fighter planes and that kind of thing. But this year they added 4 Apaches for the 250th. And watching them come down the beach in formation, low over the water, like literally they looked like they were touching the water. It was crazy. So my son was in the water and they were playing chicken, where you got, somebody up on your shoulders. And he was like, we thought that they were going to get hit. They were that low, which is kind of fun. But as you're there, the beach was packed with tons of folks that were out there celebrating America's 250th birthday. And it reminds you what 250 years actually means. A handful of people decided this country was worth building, and here we are. I think about that more than you'd guess in this work. The whole reason that opportunity zones exist is to move private money into the parts of America that have historically gotten passed over and to actually do something with the investment that's going to make an impact. A building that sat empty for years, a business that hires people, that opens up down the street. That's the founder's bet, still running 250 years later, doing well by doing good. And if you really think about what America has done for the world, it has carried over. And that's the piece of this business that I care about the most. So that's the spirit that I want to bring in today, because there's a real opportunity in front of you right now. But as we're going to get into, it comes with a real clock. So here's who this is for. If you sold something this year and you're looking at a tax bill, if you deferred a gain earlier this year and you haven't dealt with it, if you've got money sitting with a 1031 intermediary and you're not keen on any of the deals that you're looking at and you're wondering if you're going to have to blow it, if you got a sale coming up and you can see the tax on the other side of it, you are in the right place. Here's what most people get wrong. They treat the tax on a gain like a fixed number. Like the only question is when they write the check. It's not. There's a lot you can do about it. And the earlier you know your options, the more room you're going to have to use them. So here's how today is going to run. I'll walk you through what's on the table and what just changed, because there's been real movement the last few weeks. Then we're going to open it up for your questions live. If you can, start dropping them in the chat as they come to you. Don't wait, and bring your real situation. That's when this gets useful for you. Now, a lot of you have been around OZ Pros for a while. You've heard me talk about opportunity zones. You've probably got the basics down. So I'm not going to spend our whole time on the 101. We actually have a thing called Ascent. It's a weekly mastermind that we do. And in that, we actually have a bonus Ascent that we do on a monthly basis that's for beginners. It's Beginner's Ascent. And what it is, it's an hour where we hit really basic questions and we hit kind of the fundamentals of opportunity zones. If you're interested in joining Ascent, we actually have, and we'll drop it into the chat, a landing page where you can join immediately. And it's really, man, we hit a bunch of stuff in there, but that's one of the things that we do. We have a monthly 101 session. But let's recap OZs real fast because it's the foundation. And then I'm going to go to the part where you're actually here for, which is what's new, what's changed, and what it means for you right now. There's been real movement in the last few weeks, and I want to make sure you're working off the latest and greatest, not what was true 6 months ago, because it's changed relative to like what the way that we were proceeding. Here's the 90-second version. OZs are the most powerful tool in the tax code for a capital gain, and here's why. You take a gain, you roll it into a qualified opportunity fund within 180 days. You get to start that 180 days at 3 different points, depending on how you've had the gain. If it's personal and direct, you got to start with the date of the sale. So it's technically 179 days. If it's through a partnership or an S corporation or real estate, a 1231 gain, you get to start it on December 31st. If it's a partnership or an S corporation, you can start it on December 31st, or the partnership tax filing deadline in the next year, which then allows you till September of the following year to put it into a qualified opportunity fund. But when you get that money into your fund, 3 things happen. First, you defer the tax. And I'm going to operate like you're going into a 2.0 deal, because if you had a gain during the beginning part of the year and you're sitting on 180 days, we can talk about that. And if that's your specific situation, we could talk about using the valuation discount at the end of this year in order to mitigate that. But I'm going to be mainly talking about 2.0, which were impacted and enacted by the one big beautiful bill that was passed last July 4th of 2025, which basically made OZs permanent. So you're going to, number one, you're going to defer the tax for 5 years, and then you're going to be able to reduce what you ultimately owe 5 years out by either 10% and 30%, or 30% if you're in a rural qualified opportunity fund. And then if you hold for 10 years, the growth inside of that fund comes out completely tax-free, not deferred, not reduced, gone. No capital gains on the appreciation and no depreciation recapture. Now, it's interesting because there's some AI bots. So if you are searching in AI for opportunity zone stuff, it tends to hallucinate a lot. One of the things that's out there, and it's in an actual article, is that depreciation recapture is not exempted out, which is completely fallacious. And I think that it was AI that generated the article, and then that continues to build on itself. But there is no depreciation recapture. 10 years, and the upside is yours clean. And the part that people still forget is that this is not just real estate. It's for businesses. And this is for not just real estate and for real estate capital gains going into the fund in the first place. It's actually for business sale, a stock position, crypto. Almost any appreciated asset can go into an opportunity zone. And then the fund itself can hold operating businesses, not just real estate. So that's 101. That's the recap. If that's brand new to you, hang on. It'll still make sense. Grab me in the QOA, in the question and answer session, and let's figure out how we can get you the fastest way to a PhD, which I think is Ascent. But here's where it goes from interesting to worth your time. Opportunity zones are the centerpiece, but they're not the only move. The real deal is stacking, because that deferral buys you time. And it's great because we can usually get you, I mean, we've got a lot of time from post-sale to be able to go into an opportunity zone fund. And that time gives us a deferral until when the taxes are due. And that time lets us layer in other things to knock down the original bill, in addition to the 10% or the 30% reduction that you're going to get. So while the gain's deferred, we're looking at what else fits. Cost segregation, if there's real estate in the picture to pull depreciation forward, solar tax credits, which can be a serious offset, bonus depreciation. Every one of these is a separate lever, and the right combination depends completely on your situation. We can also do charitable gifting strategies and other things that allow you to be able to generate other tax offsets that we can carry forward to when your tax bill becomes due. What you sold, when, how it's held, what your timeline looks like, those are the things that you can't get from a video or a calculator. And that's the reason why a conversation with somebody on our team beats a generic answer. if a specific one of these has you wondering how it applies to you, like one of those things that I just identified, put it in the chat and I'll get to as many as I can. Now, here's what a lot of people have never heard. And for the right person, it's the biggest number on the board. If you're already in an OZ fund from earlier years, the gain you deferred comes due December 31st. Most people assume that the number is locked. It's whatever they rolled in. It's not. The rule is you owe tax on the lesser of your original gain or what your fund interest is actually worth on that date. And if your fund interest is lower, you pay taxes on that amount, not your original gain. And here's what almost nobody's pricing in. A lot of those interests are worth a lot less right now than what you originally put in, not because OZ failed, but just because of macroeconomic indicators and things that happen inside of the greater economy and just the timing of when opportunity zones came into effect. Rates went up, construction costs blew out, and a bunch of these projects are mid-build in markets that got oversupplied. That's not a knock on the investment, it's just reality. And the tax rules let that reality lower your number. And so when you value the interest correctly, illiquid, minority position, locked up, no real buyer for it, that's called a discount for lack of control and a discount for lack of marketability, that value can come down substantially. Now, let's not get crazy on it, but it can come down substantially, and your tax follows the lower number. So for some people, that's the difference between a full recognition and a substantially reduced fraction of it. I'm not going to walk you through appraisal methodology on this webinar. We've actually done that in other webinars that we've done, and we'll probably have some more coming up with some opportunities for if you want to get into a deal that's got that at play right now. But know this exists because it's real money and it's time sensitive. And if you're sitting in an early OZ fund, it might be the most important thing you do before year end. And that's the thing that I'm trying to get people to focus on is, man, we got a short window of time before December comes on us. So bring it up in the Q&A if it's you, and flag it if you want us to look at your specific situation. All right, let's talk about the news. This is the latest and greatest that I mentioned. A couple weeks back, the IRS dropped a notice, 2026-40. Most people saw a headline and kept scrolling. I read the whole thing, and there's a piece in there that changes the game for a lot of folks that nobody's really talking about. Two things to take away. One, it's now confirmed. If you deferred a gain into a fund in the early years, that gain comes into income December 31st. You pay the tax, and you can't defer it again. So it's not eligible to be rolled into another opportunity zone fund. We all kind of thought that that was going to be the case, but they unequivocally confirmed it there. Now, they did make it, and it does look like that if you have an inclusion event prior to then, that you could actually roll it into a new fund. But if you're going to let it play out, if you're going to keep your gain, now, and if you have an inclusion event, that also makes a portion of your existing investment non-qualifying. But if you're going to let it roll forward, then you need to plan for that tax bill now, and you need to start taking action to try to reduce it. Not in, October to November, or God help you, in December when everyone's scrambling. So two, and this is the one that caught even a lot of us who do this daily. If you're a sponsor, or if you've got a deal in one of the original zones and you're planning on bringing in new capital after this year, there's a hard requirement now. Well, that's if this notice becomes regs, and I'll talk about that more later. But your structure and a working capital plan have to be in place. So you actually have to have a written working capital safe harbor in place with 10% inside of your QOZB by December 31st, with either 5% of it spent or inside of a binding contract to be spent by December 31st of this year. Miss that window and the door closes on your ability to be able to buy or build qualified opportunity zone business property. So you could still put money into a QOZB. You can still put money into a QOF that goes into a 1.0 QOZB, but it won't be able to then take that money and go into a 1.0 zone and build something new. And that's an issue, right? Now there's a path through it, but the clock is real and it's short if it ultimately goes into final regs. And so we've been telegraphed what the IRS intends to do. Now there's going to be lots of, interactions from people that are sending in comments on that. But one thing I want to be precise about so nobody leaves confused. December 31st is the market deadline. That's relative to like this position about being able to take 2.0 money into a 1.0 deal. But your personal clock on any one gain is the 180 days from when you realized it, or if it was in a partnership in S Corp, 180 days from then. So if you sold something that you held individually in March, right? You sold stock or you sold crypto or whatever, your window is its own thing. And so I think that the date for an individual sale that you could put into 2.0 is actually tomorrow. It's July 8th, because if you look at like the 1st, I think is on a Friday and all the banks are closed. So then it goes 2nd, 3rd, the 4th is the first day that you can put money in. And so 179 days back from that is July the 8th. And so anybody that had a sale prior to that is going to need to deal with that. If you sold something individually, you're going to need to deal with that before the end of the year. And so there's two different clocks that we're talking about here. We're talking about individual and we're talking about partnership S Corp. And then we're also talking about the clock that the QOZB has relative to 1.0 and 2.0 and designations and that kind of thing. And lining them up is a part of what we do on a daily basis. If you're not sure which clock applies to you, that's a great one to drop in the chat. I also want to be clear that this is just a notice, and this notice is receiving lots of feedback from the industry. Feedback that will hopefully get Treasury to revise its approach and give us a little bit more flexibility. We won't know the exact rules until Treasury issues final regulations, which will hopefully be not too far out from now. And as soon as they do, we're going to be all over making sure that you understand them and that you understand how those are going to apply to your specific situation. We actually did a deep dive on this notice on our compliance call yesterday. That is a function of, that's a basically kind of a real deep kind of geek out tax thing for our Ascent Mastermind folks. And then we actually had our Tuesday Ascent Mastermind call, which happens every Tuesday from 10 to 11:30. And we talk through exact game plans for folks who have projects in a 1.0 zone that may not be eligible for getting designated as a 2.0 zone. I also want to make sure that people understand that the designation process by the states has only just begun. It just opened up on July 1st. And that if you're looking at a map that shows your property as an eligible 2.0 zone, that's it. That's just it. It's just eligible. It won't be a 2.0 zone until it gets designated by your state, by your governor, and then confirmed by the Treasury. The good news is that the states are beginning to designate their zones. And hopefully, all of them are going to be like Texas and publish their list of designated zones. So that way you can confirm if your property has been designated as a potential 2.0 zone. If it hasn't, and it's a 1.0 zone right now, you definitely need to be jumping on a call with us to see if there's a way that we could put together a working capital safe harbor plan for your deal and get your project going and get you built in with a window of time, upwards of 31 months to be able to get that project going. Another quick one, because it's not all deadline. The same notice that confirmed that recognizing your deferred gain does not kill your 10-year tax-free treatment. Right? So if you actually have, right? So if you're going to have the gain at the end of this year, or you have an inclusion event and you roll it into another one, that doesn't kill your ability to get the step up in basis to fair market value. There's a question about that. So you can pay what's due at the end of this year, still hold your position and exit tax-free down the road. And if you get the structure right, there's actually more runway on the back end for a 1.0 deal, right? So that's what I was talking about with the working capital safe harbor, that it actually gives you more than what we thought before, which is that they expire December 31st, 2028. So the answer is that for people who do it right, it's a window opening. All right, that's the picture. The gain isn't a fixed number. OZ is the core. Stack is where the savings live. Discount play is real money for the right person. And the timing right now rewards people who move first. So the early bird gets the worm. Now the part I like. I want your questions. If you haven't dropped one in the chat yet, do it now. Your real situation, what you sold or selling, roughly when, what you're trying to figure out, and I'll work through as many as I can live. Two things before I do. For whenever you want to take a next step, if you want me to look at your specific situation and actually map the plan, which moves fit, what order, what your number could look like, that's a blueprint. It's one-on-one with just me and you and my team. And that's where we get into answers because it's built on your facts. And if you're not there yet and you just want to talk it through and see if this even applies to you, you can grab a quick call with our team, 15 minutes, no pressure. We point you in the right direction. And then if you're interested in joining Ascent, we actually have a link to that where you can join directly into it. Those are going in the chat. All right, let's get to it. Let's see who we got and what we got in the chat. Oh man, I think we actually got, we have a bunch in here, which is great. So let's start pulling them in. All right, so we're going to show this one. Oh, we got Jagdish saying hello. And I think that this is maybe the same one. I have a client who has high capital gains. How do they defer save tax without investing in property? So, you know, you can, the great thing is that inside of an OZ deal, you can either invest into property or you can go into a business. So it's actually kind of flexible. All right, we got Doug. Welcome, Doug. It's good to see you back in here, man. You've got a sale. You completed a sale last week and you got an OZF and an OZB. Should you contribute the 225-ish gain now as I have a project in the OZ? Hold on, let's go back to that one. Or wait until after January 1st. Now, that's a great question. And we could get into the specifics of it, but what I would do is if you've got a project, you're probably going to want to get that. And a lot of it's going to depend on whether it's eligible for 2.0, whether it gets designated, or if it's just a 1.0 tract. I would go ahead and get some of your money in, go ahead and get the thing grandfathered in via working capital safe harbor, and then potentially invest the balance of it after January 1st. So that way you get that 10% reduction or potentially 30% later on. All right. So the capital gain is for the 2025 tax year for Jagdish. And on capital gain for a 2025 tax year, if it came off of, well, if it's 2025 tax year, I don't know that we can still defer it. It would have to be a, well, actually, no, we can. So if it came off of a partnership or an S corp, we can get it in as long as we get it in by September, Jagdish. Troy, great seeing you from Miami Gardens. Appreciate you being on here today. All right, let's get Arthur in here. What and or whom do you recommend for a rural startup OZ project developer to find investors? So Arthur, there's actually a database. Jimmy's got a database on at opportunityzones.com that's literally got every opportunity, well, I don't know if it's everyone, but it's a lot. It's probably like 8,000 plus opportunity funds. And those specifically have folks that are doing rural deals and everything else. And so I think that that's a great resource for people that are looking for like a list of funds that are out there. All right. Ty C says, for the valuation discounting, is it too early to have discounted value determined at this time, or do we need to wait closer to 12/31? That's a great question because it has to be effective 12/31, but you certainly don't want to be waiting until closer. So the key thing is, and what I would recommend is that you go ahead and get the process going now. And we're happy to help you with that. We're happy to get you plugged in. We've actually we got a product that we're doing where we'll do a preliminary analysis. We'll do a broker opinion of value of like your underlying real estate, or get you a general opinion of value to see if it makes sense to invest the money to actually have an appraisal done. And then generally kind of what we see is happening. And then if it makes sense, then we take you to the next step in the process. And we actually execute that for you and get you an appraiser, and we get your appraisal done. We make sure that we get it to a qualified IRS person that then applies discount for lack of control and discount for lack of marketability. And then they deliver that to you effective as of December 31st. So obviously they're not going to be able to deliver that until after that, but they'll have all of the stuff lined up, and then they'll confirm it as of December 31st to make sure that there hasn't been any, substantial movement in the markets, that kind of thing. Hey, Alex, great to have you on. It's good to see you again. Once again, thanks for, and anybody, if you guys are out there, and I'm going to put this back up because it's getting ready to stop showing. But man, check out Alex's podcast. It's really cool. He's got a Path of Progress podcast. I don't know why it's not letting me show it again, but this is a great example. He's got a 1031 that's failing. He's got a unique 35 unit under contract in OZ, and he's considering doing a full switch. But the question is about tax deferment. Do I need to pay capital gains taxes for the 2026 year, or can it be pushed further to 2027 tax year or further? Dude, great question, Alex. So what you could do is, because it's with your QI right now, just make sure that you don't get the money back from the QI until after July 8th, till after tomorrow, which realistically is probably not feasible. And so get the money back after that, and then that's going to allow you to put your money in after January 1st of 2027. And so you're going to get the 10%. So number one, you're going to get a 5-year deferral that way. So you don't pay the taxes until 2033. That's when they become due. And so you'll effectively pay them 27 plus, well, it comes due 2032. So then it's payable in 2033. And you're going to get either a 10% or a 30% reduction. And then you're going to have all the depreciation and everything else you can write off against it. And now you're going to be able to do that 35 unit complex. You're going to be able to take a cost seg on it, use that to further reduce the taxes, to reduce the income that you're paying on it, sell it after a 10-year hold, and pay zero capital gains and zero depreciation recapture. So Alex, thanks for the example there, because that's one thing that we do on a regular basis is we help save failed 1031s. And your 180-day clock for purposes of opportunity zones does not start until you receive the money from the QI. So that's a great one. All right. We got Dan, 2.6 million in 2020, 2.2 in new development, 400,000 in solar deal. Project will end up being $6 million project. Let's show that again. And I have put in another $1 million in cash and 2.5 in loans. Question is, can I continue to defer or add some of the $1 million new money I put in, get additional tax benefit for that? So Dan, the key is that it has to be capital gains that you put into your QOF as part of a deferral strategy that you filed on your 8949 and then your 8997. And if that's the case, then yes, you can get the additional tax deferral credit on it. If it was just $1 million in cash, you're going to want to make sure that you put that in as a loan and not as an equity contribution, because anything that's non-capital gains comes in as non-qualifying. All right. So what about the gain inside of a partnership? Can it be deferred? So if you've realized the gain, Xenia, then yes. If it's coming off of a partnership or an asset that's been sold by a partnership, then yes. And then you have the ability to start your 180-day clock at 3 different points: from the date of sale, December 31st, or March 15th, the partnership tax filing deadline. So it's a great question. All right, Lee, good to see you in here today. An existing business operating inside of an opportunity zone, but not currently operating as a QOZB, is looking to move to another building within the opportunity zone. The building happens to be an asset of an OZ fund currently being developed. How can the business restructure by creating a QOZB? If the current fund is open to us being a QOZB business tenant within their building, how might we structure this? Or do we have to establish our own fund and QOZB a better alternative, and why? So you can absolutely get QOZB status based upon your in a lease, as opposed to having to actually buy real estate. So you can become a QOZB based upon entering into that lease with them. Now, in order to become a QOZB, you're going to need to have your own qualified opportunity fund, take capital gains, put it into the QOF, and then fund the business, recapitalize the business with those capital gains dollars into your QOZB. So that's generally the way that gets done. But great question, Lee. Love it. It's I love that model, and I'm a huge proponent of it. And I think that in 2.0 that we're going to see a lot of private equity groups figure this out. That, man, I can take a business, I can buy it, I can move it into a zone. I don't have to actually own real estate. I can lease, but why would I not want to own real estate? I can have a separate prop co that leases to my opco, and now I get all of the benefits of tax-free appreciation by just literally having a lease on a building inside of an opportunity zone. Now, you have to hit the 50% gross income requirements. You have to hit the non-qualified financial property, that kind of thing. But if you've got 50% of your workforce working in the zone, you're probably going to be eligible to be able to make that happen. So since the 2.0 has a rolling 5-year deferral, is there some way that the original fund create a means of helping those investors to be able to liquidate part of their investment and pay the taxes due? Yeah, so you could trip inclusion events along the way. Now, if you do that, you got to be careful, because if you have an inclusion event, that the regs say that the portion that you have included, the portion that's been distributed, actually makes that a non-eligible investment now. So you got to be really careful with that, Arthur. And so, one of the things that and I think that's one of the reasons why you haven't seen a proliferation of that as part of a strategy, is because there's a question about whether or not that's going to, make it so that a portion of your investment now becomes non-qualifying. So Howard, I don't know if you were on Ascent today, but we had Frances Manone, and big shout out to Frances if she's on here. But she has been instrumental in helping states kind of come up with their process about designating zones and getting feedback from people and all that kind of stuff. And best practices for states is that they then publish those zones to all of their constituents, so that way they have the ability to be able to look at what the zones are going to be. So my understanding is that they actually nominated them to either yesterday or today, Howard. And so Nicholas asks, it has eligible zones published, not the actual ones the governor will nominate and the Treasury will approve, as far as I know. So once again, I don't know if they just published their eligible zones or if they published the ones that went through. Should have asked Francis that. My understanding is that they actually published the ones that they're nominating. I thought that they actually nominated and published them, but anyhow, we'll look into that and we'll get the specifics on it. But certainly worth running to ground. That's one of the things that I'm going to be looking at, is if they did nominate them, I'm going to be digging, because I've got 2 projects in Texas. We got one in Taylor and one in Somerset and Von Ormy. And I want to make sure, I want to see if that Taylor tract is going to be eligible. So Jadish says, I sold on March 4th, 2026, $50,000. And so Jadish, you're eligible to put it into a QOF. Now, if it was an individual sale, you're going to have to get that in within 179 days from that date, because you count the date of the sale. So it's technically 180, but you have to start counting on the date of the sale. So I'd have to put that into a calculator real fast, but you could put it into Google, and we've actually got a comment on there that if you want us to run the numbers and map the plan, we can help do that. So would love to do that, or you can just dump it into a calculator, Yagdish, and see if it's 180 inside of the 180 days. And I think that it's personal capital gain. All right, we got Janice right now. I've got land under contract closing at the end of this month in a designated 1.0 zone, but does not look like it's eligible for 2.0. I do not have immediate capital gains to contribute, but potentially thinking of selling a short-term rental to fund a QOF. We already have a QOF set up, right, by us, so we know that it's good, right, Janice? So you're set there. Can we fund with non-capital gains? And the answer is yes. And so what I would do is I would get, and I'd loan the money into the QOZB as non-capital gains. So when you put in non-capital gains, you want to make sure that it's a loan. Typically, we do that at the QOZB level. And then go ahead and get it purchased. Get your working capital safe harbor plan done. And then once you have your capital gain, put that in January 4th of next year. And now you've got a 5-year deferral on it with at least a 10% reduction. I don't remember where you are, Janice, but could be a 30% reduction if it's in a rural zone. And so now you get the benefits of 2.0 as long as you're in a working capital safe harbor. And this is the key, is that you have to have 10% of the aggregate amount of that working capital safe harbor in there, right? But you can loan it in, and then you have to have 5% of it spent. So you could actually close on the land, right? And that's going to count for your 5%, or have a binding contract for it. Those are the requirements that they gave us inside of the notice that we just got, the 2026-40. Appraisers are telling us that the appraisal is good for 6 months. Now that would be the appraisal on the property itself. And this is from Frederick Chen. I just showed Janice. So this is Fred Chen. And yes, appraisal is technically good for 6 months, but I would just go ahead and have it dated December 31st. That way it doesn't give any kind of leeway to attack it relative to, it doesn't give the IRS a way to attack it. So make it effective as of December 31st, just have them issue it as of that date, and then they can update it to the extent that there's any kind of massive macroeconomic situations that might affect the appraisal. All right. Alex asks, can I combine OZ fund with passive cash investors, equity or debt side, and a bridge loan to finance a larger project acquisition? Absolutely. So once again, if somebody wants to get the benefit, they got to drop it into a qualified opportunity fund, and it's got to be capital gains. To the extent that they don't have capital gains, they can just invest directly into your QOZB. And then that's going to be non-qualifying. They're not going to get the tax benefit, but then you could bring in a bridge loan while you raise the balance of the cash. That's going to be key inside of this 1.0 to 2.0 transition. If you got a 1.0 deal that's not going to be eligible to go into 2.0, get your working capital safe harbor plan in place. Get a bridge loan funding 10% of the aggregate extent of that working capital safe harbor, and then arrange to have 5% either spent or in a binding contract. And Alex, that would be kind of the way to make it happen. Man, just saying, I love this. Keep the questions coming. We're rocking. This is awesome. I love it when we have folks as engaged as they are. All right, Catherine's got a question. If I can't get the fair market value from the investor, the QOF you invested in, do I just use my original investment amount as your capital gain calculation? You could potentially get a CPA to based on facts and circumstances, particularly if you think that it's gone down. You could get a CPA potentially to give you an opinion relative to like what that is. So it's probably worth looking at. And then as well, just continue to reach out to your fund so that way you can try to get as much information as possible. All right. Doug Ottersberg, following up, can the QOZB investment be in 2 units of a 4-unit condo building? Yes, it absolutely can. Now, if you do that, you're going to want to make sure that you're buying on a condo. You're probably going to want to buy original use. And so that way you don't have to substantially improve, because in a typical deal, you have to substantially improve and double the value of the improvements. And in a condo deal, that's pretty much the entire value of the condo. All right, Alex, which is great. That's what we're here for. The issue that I have is a 35-unit property on a contract now with 90 days to close. That's fine, because you can, but key thing is you got to set up your QOF and your QOZB, because what we're going to do is we're going to, and ideally, if you've got like a little bit of capital gain now, we can set up and put it into the QOF. We can fund that down into the QOZB, and then you have a loan that comes into the QOZB. You close on it. You could close on it this year, right? And you need a working capital safe harbor. Like that's if it's a 1.0 zone that's not going to get redesignated into 2.0. Let's just assume that that's the case. And then you can bring in your capital gains in 2027. What's funny is that you actually have the whole life of the working capital safe harbor. That's the window that I was talking about. That's actually better than the December 31st, 2028 deadline that we had before. Because you could have a 5-year working capital safe harbor that says, hey, it's going to take me 62 months to get this deal done. I'm going to bring in money in month 1, and then I'm going to bring in more money over the course of the deal, including month 31, which will get you out to month 62, where you can now bring money in all the way up to month 62. Now you have to spend all of the money and get it spent outside of the working capital safe harbor plan. And you actually have to have your, all of your improvements done by that date. But that's 5+ years. That's 5 years, 2 months, as opposed to December 31st, 2028. So, I mean, it's not a bad result, assuming that this is the way they go, but it gives you a pretty big window to be able to do that. Francis gave us the clearance. She said they are planning to announce their public window just closed June 26th. And so when they designate, they're going to let everybody know. So thanks for the clarification on that, Francis. And once again, thanks for all your hard work relative to what you're doing. And this actually goes into the next question. And Francis, I don't know if you've got a resource for this. I'm sure that you do. We've got it posted inside of Ascent, and so you could get it there. Diane, I know that Francis has posted her resources relative to what the states are doing and what their processes are. And I know that North Carolina is going through a nomination, and they're getting feedback right now. I actually talked with the planner in Wadesboro. We got a project in Wadesboro, which is Anson County, and they are working with the Department of Commerce right now to figure out what zones are going to get designated. And they've actually got a tool that's online through North Carolina's Department of Commerce about the eligible tracks, and then a way for you to be able to give them feedback too. All right, Jimmy in the house. Texas says they're submitting their nominations no later than August 3rd, which is great. And Jimmy, thanks for the book. Big shout out to Jimmy Atkinson, co-founder here at OZ Pros. And he's got the book out right now. If you haven't gotten your copy, you need to go to Amazon and bust it out. I think it was an Amazon bestseller. Which is awesome, Jimmy. Love to see that happen, and really appreciate all that you do in this space. Once again, man, we need tons more advocacy. We need tons more people getting involved. And now that this program is permanent, everybody who's in here, you have a leg up over literally everybody else that is thinking about opportunity zones. And you are going to be a front runner in this space. So continue to learn, continue to advocate, continue to get deals done, and continue to shout it from the rooftops, because that's what we need in order for people to understand that this program is accomplishing what it's set out to do. Francis says, no state has their list up yet. They're coming as states make their decisions. All right, Ty says, did I hear that OZ Pros currently offers will have a valuation service? Yes, we actually, so we're not valuation experts ourselves, but we have a number of them that we are working with. And so we will run a preliminary analysis, and then we'll run it to ground for you to coordinate making that happen and getting all of the right documentation for you. So, and Doug says that his condo is a new build, which is awesome. So Doug, when you do that, make sure that you get proper paperwork inside of your contract to purchase, and then also inside of your, we call it a bring down certificate of closing, and your side of your closing documents that says that that it's new construction, that it's not been available for depreciation, that it's not been rented or available to rent, and that the developer has not put it in service or depreciated it. And that gives you the paper trail that you'll need relative to backing up that you're getting original use. I scrolled a little bit too far. Chris is leading a regional initiative and shifting a fund because you couldn't get EPA approval. What do I need to do to bring the fund compliant, and how should I include government, economic organizations, and banks into the fund's management? Now, that's going to be a function of what they're willing to do. It's fairly easy relative to your QOF documentation. If you want a bank or a government economic organization to be a manager, all you got to do is just add them in as a manager. Now, as it relates to bringing the fund compliant, a lot of that's going to be dependent on when you capitalize the fund. So if you put money in, that money needed to be spent. If it was 2021, then you've got some potential like COVID extensions, that kind of thing. We have a review service. We'd be happy to do a review and then give you like specific advice on like how you can actually bring it into compliance. Stoney, he's got a property that he purchased with new, I'm seeing a QOF and QSB in December 2025 under a 1.0. We're planning to do an extensive remodel and hope to have it completed by spring of 27. We sent the track to be designated as a potential 2.0 rule zone. Is there a better strategy to turn this into a 2.0 deal? Or are we safe as far as our projected time frame to complete the deal under 1.0 regs and expiration? So if you bought it in December 2025, I'm assuming that you've got a working capital safe harbor in place and probably that you funded at least 10% and that you've spent like at least 5% of the aggregate working capital safe harbor. If that's the case, then you're good to go. And so, Stoney, we need to actually talk about that area down there on the Gulf Coast, because I'm pretty sure that it's not eligible for redesignation. And it's going to be good to have some working capital safe harbors and stuff like that, so that we can make sure that that there is plenty of room to be able to do continued projects down there. All right, we've got, so Alex is asking for a recording in the session, and yep, it's going to be available shortly after it ends. All right, so, and Chris said that you never capitalized the fund. That's great. So then all you need to do is just take a look at how you want that management structure to work, and then you can effectively revise that however you want. All right, so we got a basic question. Please explain the original use requirement versus substantial improvement requirement. That's a great question, Ty. And when you purchase property inside of an opportunity zone, they wanted to make sure that people weren't just land banking. And so they were like, listen, we want something to happen inside of the zone. So you either have to buy something that's original use, so that's raw land, or something that's being constructed. So if you buy something before it gets a certificate of occupancy or before it's been depreciated or put in service, then that counts as original use. If it's not original use, then you have to substantially improve it. And that means that you double the basis of the value of any kind of improvements that are on the property. And if it's a rural zone, then you have to increase it by 50%. And that's for anybody that's in a substantial improvement window right now. So if you bought something and you are now improving it, you haven't hit substantial improvement yet, and you're in a rural zone, and you can find the rural zones on Jimmy's webpage at opportunityzones.com. He's got them designated, they're orange. And then you only have to do a 50% improvement to it over the value of the improvements that are there. So that's how substantial improvement versus original use works. All right. Diane wants to know, am I reading the map right? On North Carolina census tracts, the blue seems to have flipped. So once again, I don't know the specifics of that, Diane. I'd have to look at the map. Chris said, are there any other public-private partnership funds out there that could be pointed to as an example? You know, we talked with a couple of folks about potentially setting up a fund for their, and where it was going to be run by their local kind of economic development corporation. And, but effectively it ended up being, so they were still private. It just so happened that they were also part of the economic development corporation for that locale. So, I don't know of any examples where there's actually a public-private partnership that's actually happening. I know that Paul St. Pierre was working on a bunch of that stuff. I don't know if he's on, if he can drop something into the chat, or if anybody else has got any ideas, drop it into the chat. Would love to hear about if anybody knows of some public-private partnerships that are happening. And then, all right, Diane says, my OZ 1.0 is in upper and downtown. I thought was booming, or am I reading it wrong? So Diane, I'll have to look at that, and we can talk about it on Ascent next Tuesday. Diane's actually in Ascent, and that's one of the things that that we regularly do every Tuesday. So, man, I've got a great, it's amazing how I'm able to type in all of these things and answer questions at the same time. I got a great team that's been behind the scenes, rocking the comments out in the chat. Thank you, team. Big kudos to you guys. Very much appreciate you. Very much appreciate all of you participating today. And Chris, one of the things is, so we got some people weighing in. We got Patrick, who's in Ascent. He says that there's potentially a public-private fund in Oregon. It's like D3 or something like that. Once again, I think that Jimmy's got a database. I don't know if he's got those labeled into public-private or not, but certainly worth running to ground and to maybe researching with Jimmy and seeing if there might be some other ones out there. Well, thank you for everybody participating today. Once again, we've got links to be able to set up a blueprint. If you want to go direct where we jump into a strategy, we look at your stuff. If you want to jump into Ascent, we've got a link for that. Or if you want for us to run a preliminary evaluation discount, we can certainly do that for you too. And once again, thank you to everybody that participated today. And hopefully we'll see you guys in Ascent, or we'll see you in a blueprint. Cheers, y'all.